Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wrestling Through the Years podcast. I'm Dizzle. I'm here with Dutchie.
Yeah.
We have our other co-host, Eric, Money E.
What's up?
And we have two very special guests today.
All right. We have with us a friend of the show. Been a while since he's been on, but he made sure he was here for this very special occasion. We have Rugged Rod Price, the California stud.
Hello.
Yep. And we have a first-timer here on the podcast. Hopefully it's not his last time. Hopefully we're not that bad. We have with us famous Dallas referee James Beard is here.
How you doing, guys?
Good.
Good to meet you.
How are you?
Good.
So happy to have everybody on here. And we are here tonight to pay tribute to a man who, in his words, a dagnab son of a gun. Or it sounds like something he would say. Hey, Sean. And we are here to pay tribute to Black Bart, who unfortunately lost his battle with cancer back a couple weeks ago. But we're here to pay tribute to the man. James and Rod know him very well. And James, I'm going to throw it to you first because you are the first timer on the show. So that unfortunately means you get to go first. When was the first time you met the man known as Black Bart, Rick Harris?
Oh wow! Probably when he first came into world class after that time when he came in as champion, kind of the pseudo championship. That was probably the first time I met him. Got to know him a lot better later on, and we became really good friends. Bart's just he was a real deal, man.
Yeah, he seemed like the real deal. Like he was definitely one of a kind.
Yeah.
Rod, when was the first time you got the pleasure of meeting Black Bart?
I met Bart right after his WWF run. You know, he was up there and came back down to Dallas, and you know, he large and looming in the dressing room, and I went over and introduced myself. And that was my first meeting, probably early 90. I think it was 90 something.
Yeah, because I think, he had the WWF run, which was funny because in the WWF, a lot of the guys in 1990 that he had or that were coming in, their first match was usually against him. And he was just used as as the enhancement talent. But he was Dustin Rhodes' first match in the WWF. He was on the opposing team of the Legion of Doom's first match. He was Shane Douglas's first match in, and a few other guys, I think, too.
So he was kind of that proving ground.
Yeah. And I remember him. The first time I actually remember watching him on television was actually in a Madison Square Garden, back when Madison Square Garden was on, when they would televise the MSG shows, which, by the way, seems so long ago. And it was him and Hercules. And it was like Hercules, he was just kind of like this lower level guy. They were getting ready to feed him the Earthquake at WrestleMania. Right. And him and Bart, like, they could hit. They could hit each other, and it turned out to be a very hard-hitting match, which I kind of like that. And I was a fan of Hercules. Yeah. So,
great guy.
What was that, James?
Great guy. Love her. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he might not have been a polished worker, but he was just like he looked very strong. And like I felt like that was a really good match between him and Bart. Do you remember the first time you actually saw Black Bart? I mean, I know you're younger than the rest of us.
Yeah. For a lot of this, I was drying on a mattress somewhere when a lot of this was going down.
Oh, geez.
But as a big fan, of course, I love all the wrestling and going back, and of course, it's going back, and we have, YouTube and all the various to watch a lot of this old stuff. the first match I've ever seen of him is the Cotton Bowl. I think it was the Cotton Bowl with Kevin Von Erich. I don't know if that's what it was called, but it was like in that stadium. I think it was 6 world class.
Okay.
But it's just the psychology and we're just fans. I don't know much about. I mean, you guys know a lot more than me, but just it making me believe every single thing he's doing and the hard hitting action and and then when Kevin finally fucking reaches for the comeback at the end and then hits the drop kick off the top rope and then the splash and it perfectly worked match, that had me in it the whole time and the crowd just as much. But I've seen a bunch of my first like official was like the World Class DVD. I think they mentioned Black Bart a little bit and like a snippet.
Yeah.
But I love his work from what I've seen. But
it would be very hard to not have a good match with Bart. You just he was just that good. He really was.
Yeah.
At any level guy to get in the ring with him. I mean, if you were really good, then you're going to have a great match. If you were so, he was still going to bring you up to a level that's good enough. He was just that good. That's how that Bart was the consummate worker.
Yeah. We have a comment here. John Falsetta. He goes, I remember Bart being world-class world champion, then in GWF. He said he used to go every Friday. Yeah, that's right, because in GWF, you guys taped on Fridays, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And World Class was doing that too before. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was always a Friday night show?
Yeah. The only time that changed after they went to after World Class went to Friday, one time it was a Tuesday night sportatorium show. And after they changed to Friday night, the only time that changed was a little while when USWA came in and they did some Saturday morning shows.
Okay. Now, James, I wanted to ask you because I feel like you would probably be the best person to know this. How did when Bart came into World Class, how did he get along with the Von Erichs?
Oh, fine. Bart got along with everybody. The thing about Bart, he could be kind of gruff and he'd say what he thinks, but he was really easy to get along with. I mean, those guys all liked each other and got along well. There weren't any kind of issues there.
Okay, good. Now a lot of people might not. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Bart was in Mid-South at one point. Now, he wasn't called Black Bart. He was under his kind of under his real name. He was Hangman Harris.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm pretty sure everybody knows that he came in as a mercenary or bounty hunter, I should say, for Skandor Akbar. Did those two guys' careers parallel each other or what?
Not really, but Ack started way before Bart did. But Ack kind of had he kind of had a soft place in his heart for Bart. He liked Bart a lot. He gave him a lot of trouble and kidding him around.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What was it, Roddy? Used to the first name that Bart used in wrestling was a Crusher Malakoff or something like that. And Bart Ack would just give him fits about that, But yeah, they got along really well. Bart was kind of one of Ack's favorite guys.
Yeah.
Now, Bart was also managed by J.J. Dillon in Mid-Atlantic.
Yeah.
Do you guys know who did he prefer as his manager? Did he like Akbar better or did he like J.J. better?
Well, I mean, I never asked Bart that. I couldn't. I don't know if Rod ever heard him say it or not.
No, I haven't.
I would assume he was a lot more. He worked with Ack a lot more than he did JJ. But I mean, how could you not like JJ? I mean,
Right.
JJ was just a wonderful guy, and he was up in that level of I guess talent that Ack and Gary Hart and all those guys were. So I'm sure Barton enjoyed working with JJ as much as he did anybody.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering because sometimes I don't know if like wrestlers prefer one manager over the other.
I think it's just somebody to work. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, for me, I had wonderful experiences with Ack, and I had wonderful experience with Gary Hart. You know, it for me, I didn't have a preference. I loved them both, so
Okay.
it was a
You
pleasure.
don't get much better than those two, you know,
No,
and they were so different too. I mean,
yeah,
you
totally
know,
different.
yeah, Ack would get involved in things a lot more, and he was a lot more vocal and everything. And Gary was more like a football coach or something on the sideline, you know.
Yeah,
So it was just a different approach, but both of them were effective, and both of them were as good as you can get.
yeah. Gary would always, to me, Gary would always tell me stuff before the match. And if I had any you know, I said, should I have done this or should I have done that? After the match, he was there. During the match, he was, you know, I was the performer and he was the manager. Where with Ack, I could throw somebody to Ack and Ack could jab him with a stick or, you know, get a little heat on that. But Gary was totally different with that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, James, I got to ask now in Global, I know Ack was kind of like, were you and Ack part of the office in Global too?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like,
I mean, we had different people that were actually bookers. Ack was it part of the time. Of course, Eddie Gilbert part of the time, but I was always kind of I guess the second guy in command, one way or the other, or something like that.
No matter what.
Yeah, it didn't matter which one was there, but
No.
yeah, yeah. But I was in the office with him, yeah, with whoever was there. Yeah.
yeah. I know, because like I listened to or we watch JBL. JBL's been doing the something to wrestle with in Bruce Pritchard's place,
Right.
and in my opinion, I think JBL's actually doing a better job.
I'm going
But
to tell him that.
yeah, and like he talked about like your name, and even in the stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw, his regular podcast, your name comes up all the time.
Well, I say we are very close. It's just like with Rod. There's three or four guys that I'm usually associated with, and Rod being one of them, John being another one, Tim Storm is another one. But it's just kind of one of those things when you become so close,
Yeah.
just like brothers, really, more than anything
Yeah.
else. And yeah, John, I had literally opened the door for John
Sure did.
when he came to looking for a job at the Sportatorium. He had never had a match, and Ack and I were sitting in the dressing room, and I heard somebody knock on the door, and I went and opened the door, and there he was, and we actually put him in a match with Rod that night.
Yeah.
And the deal was is if he's pretty good, then I'm going to let the match go. And if I see that it's not going to be so good, then I'll just tell Rod to pin him. But
Right.
obviously it went well, and that was the start of his career.
Right. Yeah, I remember he told that in his Hall of Fame speech.
Yes, he
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. John's been very, very good to me about giving credit and that kind of thing. Probably too much sometimes, but he did that. And he when I was given the award at Cauliflower Alley, he came in and told that same story and some other nice things in that setting. So it's nice to have guys like John and Rod and Tim, guys that appreciate when you try to help them get to the next level, and it means a lot when they acknowledge that.
Right.
And since you said the name, I do want to. We definitely get back to Black Bart, but real quick, James, can I ask you about your program and your boxing match with Bruce Pritchard? Because as soon as I saw that, it's like that's the first thing I need to ask you.
Let me tell you, that was Eddie Gilbert's idea. Eddie came to me and he said, "Look, I want you to stop refereeing for a while and I want you to wrestle." And I went, "What in the hell are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, I've got an idea for you to work with Bruce, just something different, And he told me what he wanted to do, and we did about I don't know, 6 or 7, 8 matches, different kinds of matches and stuff. And it was interesting. Boxing match was one of them, and you know, it was fun for a little while. It was different. Nothing. You're not going to talk about being classic wrestling or anything, but it wasn't supposed to be. You know, we were supposed to not look like we knew what we were doing,
Yeah.
and it worked out pretty well. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
When because I told my brother here earlier, I said, you know, he boxed Bruce Pritchard. He's like, all right, I know the show's about Bart tonight, but I'm gonna when we have him on, I'm gonna ask him.
Yeah,
You went
well,
over to the boxing match
we
too,
can
right?
yeah, we can get into that deeper some other time, but it's
Yeah.
a long story. But it was interesting. I loved working with Eddie Gilbert. He was so creative, and
Yeah.
and you know, and I was so disappointed when he left because of a lot of situations. But that was one of those ideas he came up with, and you know, I was, and you know, I talk to Doug every once in a while now, and he says, you know, Eddie always said you were his right hand man, and I said, well, yeah, he worked me over on that one though.
So before, and I got a feeling that a lot of this is we're going to talk a lot about the GWF stuff that Bart was involved in. But I do have to bring up, or did you want to bring it up? The Desperados.
Oh, the WCW.
Yeah, the WCW Desperados.
I only know what I've heard, and what I've heard was that Dusty saw the Three Amigos movie.
Yeah.
And he wanted to redo it, and he wanted it to be like those guys were like searching for Stan Hansen so they could like work with Stan Hansen and be a part of a group, but they were like kind of supposed to be bumbling around, and it never made it to past segments, right? Did they?
No, I mean, I think maybe a house show.
Okay. But I've gone back and looked at a couple of the vignettes. It's just hilarious. It's some of the funniest stuff.
Yeah. And by the way, I got to mention now, of course, the three guys in there, it was Bart, Dutch Mantel, and Randy Colley, who played the role. His character name was Deadeye Dick.
Yep.
Who only had one working eye, one working ear. And in these vignettes, Bart was the straight man. Bart was the level head.
That's a scary thought.
That's a stretch right there.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Go back and watch the vignettes. Like that's the way it came out, because like in the vignettes, like Dutch was always trying to kill Randy Colley, and Bart's like, we can learn him. We can learn him. Like, leave him alone. We can learn him.
Have you read Bart's book?
I have not yet. I
Yeah,
want to.
He talks a little bit about that in there, and I heard him talk about that numerous times. His story is that that the plan was to make that be like a kind of a spin-off on its own and have almost its own show with those guys. Okay. I don't know if that's true or not or whatever. I'm sure they told Bart something like that because that's what he believed. And, you know, he was pretty disappointed that it didn't work out.
There was going to be a whole show for the Desperados?
Yeah, that was what they told Bart that the plan was, yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, it made sense. I mean, they were on TBS at the time. I mean, TBS could offer him a time slot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure, Rod, you've heard him talk about that, I know.
Yeah. And believe me, James, he was very disappointed. He didn't get his own show.
I think I don't know if it's Dusty or whoever, but they let him to believe that this was going to be like its own standalone program at some point. Yeah.
Now I watched a clip that Dutch Mantel did, because on his podcast, his co-host gave him a choice. He's like, do you want to talk about the Desperados or do you want to talk about the first time you met Steve Austin? And he goes, oh, I've talked about Austin many times. Let me talk about the Desperados. And he said that Lex Luger and Sting went to Dusty and said, you got to cut this because we don't want to be in the ring with him. And
that might be true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but my question is that like Lex and Sting were top guys. This was meant to be a comedy act. Like,
Yeah.
Lex and Sting didn't actually think that the Desperados were going to go over on him, did they?
Well, I mean, stranger things in wrestling have happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not disrespecting those three guys because, to be honest, from what I saw, the vignettes were hilarious.
Yeah.
So I could see them working a program with the Young Pistols, Tracy and Steve, and getting that over. Like, because Tracy and Steve, the Young Pistols, like
Bart's take on it was that the some of the top guys, it may have been Luger or Sting or whoever, didn't like the fact that they were getting so much attention.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if that's true or not either, but that was
James.
Bart's
He
story.
told me the same thing. Bart told me, he said, we were getting over, and they didn't like it.
Yeah, I don't remember Bart ever saying anything about working with them or having a program with them, but I do remember him saying that.
Okay, it does make sense, especially when it comes to Luger, because Luger back in those days, he was kind of like he was kind of among those. All right, this is my spot. I mean, that's the way it appeared on TV. I don't personally know him. Yeah. I've met Lex once, and he was a sweetheart of a guy when I met him. He's also like myself and my brother here. He's a fellow Buffalo native. So,
well, I didn't know Lex early on in his career. I've met him and been around him a few times since in the last few years. And he's a much different guy now than what he was from everything I've heard.
Very humble man.
Yeah. The times I've been around him in the last 5 years, he's been very humble, very very nice, and just a completely different person.
Okay. All right. So John Falsetta in the chat says that both Bart and Dutch said that Flair, Sting, and Luger were mad about the TV time they got. They were supposed to get the 6-man titles, but it got killed.
That may be true too.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that could very well be true. But there was some, evidently Dutch said it and Bart said it, that there was some noise from some of the guys about the attention they were getting or the time they were taking up on the program or whatever, and there was some jealousy or something going on, and especially Dutch wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, so,
right. Oh no, I believe.
Yeah,
I definitely believe it, coming from both Dutch and Bart.
Yeah.
Now getting into the one of the first times I remember seeing Bart in Global was, and I brought this up the last time we had John Horton, Craig Johnson, on the show, who would have been here had he not been out of town tonight. I brought it up because it was a tag match. It was Bart and Tug Taylor versus Chris Walker and Steve Simpson for the tag titles. And Tug took the pin with Bart just standing on the apron.
That must have been while Pedicino was still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was like September, October, I think, 91.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm horrible about dates. I don't know. Rod may be a little better about it than I am, but I'm terrible about dates. But that sounds about right.
James, I missed the first part of that because I was still in Puerto Rico.
Well, and that's an issue I had too, because I was going back and forth to Japan a lot, and
right.
I'd be gone sometimes 6 or 8 weeks at a time. So my dates for Global and all.
There's a lot of blank spots in there. I know.
Yeah, there sure are. Yeah.
Well, I remember. I don't know if you were in the building or not. I know you weren't because I just recently watched the match, James. I'm pretty sure you were not the referee.
Yeah, I don't recall that. I worked with all those guys at one time or the other, but I don't recall that particular match.
Yeah. So like one of the things, and I questioned John about this, and he just laughed it off when afterwards, because Tug, you know, in character, Tug was mad. He's like, he asked Bart, he's like, why didn't you come to me? You just stood on the apron. Like, I just got pinned. Why didn't you stand on the, and then he hit Bart, like he hit Bart in the face and started pounding on him. And Craig Johnson and Scott Hudson were just like, why is Tug Taylor attacking Black Bart? Bart didn't take the fall. Tug Taylor did. And I'm like, I watched it as a kid, but then also watching it as an adult, I'm screaming, even though I know they can't hear me. I'm screaming. I'm like, because he just stood on the apron. And I asked John about that.
It was justified.
And John Horton, to his credit, he's just like, well, I mean, he did take the fall. And I'm like, okay. I just took the answer and we moved on to the next subject.
Yeah, I like I said, I don't recall that in particular. I probably was in Japan at the time. Bill Eadie was the booker, so I'm sure that he had a reason for that happening.
Yeah.
Probably, you know, maybe wanted to start something with Bart and Tug. I don't know.
They did have a match.
Well, that makes sense. And you know,
Yeah.
Bart worked both sides of the dressing room. You know, all those years he was here, you know, for a while he'd be one of X guys, and then you know, and there'd be times when he would be against them, you know. So he had his ups and downs and backs and forth, you know, all those years. Yeah.
Now another thing, and this was kind of like Bart's like introductory promo, because they used to do the thing on the GWF shows on, you know, on ESPN, where Bonnie would get a question from the fans and then ask the wrestler about it later on in the show.
Right.
And a fan asked Black Bart, why are you here? Which apparently was the introductory question to anybody that came into the company, because they asked Brian Lee the same thing. And a few other people. I think they even asked Akbar that in a fan question. And so she asked Black Bart, she goes, Black Bart, why are you here? And Bonnie Blackstone, like her reaction to this, because Bart just started screaming and said, well, you know, I ain't no dadgum unfamiliar face. And he's just screaming, and Bonnie's going like this. And he's like, I'm going to get me a Coca-Cola and some corn chips, and when I'm needed, you know, let me know, or something like that. And I was just like, even as a kid, I'm like, I love this guy.
Oh yeah,
that was one of those things that I loved about that era, because and like, you know, Rod can tell you this, you know, we would have an idea of what we wanted the guy to hit and say or whatever, but you could tell Bart, you know, give us a minute on this, and he'd nail it every time.
Yeah.
And you know, and Rod was that way. The guys back then just knew how to do that, and they were believable, and it was just kind of an extension of their personality, which you know, sometimes I miss these days.
Yeah, unscripted.
Yeah. It's, you know, just let it go. You know.
Yeah, it's when it was ad lib and real, and you know, whatever came to the heart, popped in the head, and came out the mouth. You know, we ran.
Yeah, I like going back and watching it. Like a lot of times, I'm finding my like, is this guy playing a character, or is he just like? It just seemed like he was just being himself. And I know, I like from what I've heard, was very much into the cowboy stuff and that, you know, that type of a character. But it seemed like a lot of the times he was just going out there and being Bart. I never knew him like you guys did, but
the best characters, the best personas in wrestling are generally an extension or an exaggeration of your real personality.
Yeah,
and that's, you know, that's the cool thing about the way it used to be. You know, I hate to be that guy, but that's just the way it is. You know.
Yeah.
And you can't just tell somebody, look, I want you to be, you know, a cowboy, and you know, you came from New York City or something, you know, and you don't have any background in it. You know, I mean, some guys can act and maybe do that, but the real thing, if it's in you, it's in you. You know, and Bart, that was Bart. Bart was a country boy. He was just Yeah, he was down home. What you saw was what you got.
Right. Uh definitely. Now, another thing I want to bring up here is the formation of the Wild Bunch, which was Black Bart, Wild Bill, and Rattlesnake Rates. And when they first really got together, Rod, you were involved. You weren't really involved in the match. You were on crutches, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And I forget who I know it was Bill and Gary Young and
Probably John Tatum.
it
Tatum
was Bill, Gary Young, and Rattlesnake Rates versus Tatum, and I think Falcone, and maybe one of the Maulers, maybe Jack Victory, or
Could have been.
I might
Could
have
have
him.
been. It could have been Jack.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like there was the DQ finish, and you got, and Akbar had already debuted for you guys, DQ finish, and you were getting ready to use the crutch, and Bart came in with the branding iron and broke your crutch in half.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, Scott Hudson and Greg Johnson are trying to interview Bart, trying to figure out, what's going on. And then Bill comes over and basically invites him into the Wild Bunch. And Bart goes, "Let me tell you what, Bill Irwin, there's one dagnum thing you can dang sure count on. Whenever Black Bart is needed the most, I'll be there. And there's not an Akbar, there's not a dagnum thing you can do about it."
Yeah.
At
Well,
Bart.
Well, James, you might remember, but I think I was the only guy ever to brand Black Bart with his own BB,
It's the only one I know of.
because I remember he was telling me about it. He said, "Man," he goes, "this is what we're going to do. It's never been done. I've always branded people with my BB." He said, "You're going to snatch it and you're going to brand me." And I don't remember all the match details, but I remember we co-cocked him somehow and hit him with that brand, and it got over. But I want to say they killed it not too
Yeah,
soon after that.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting little time right there, and I'm not sure what everybody was thinking at at the time, because you guys were heels and they were heels, and
Yeah.
and and you had some pretty good matches against each other, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Now,
But they ended up turning them faces, which kind of took away from what we had going,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the crowd would pick who they were going to cheer for.
yeah, and you're not gonna make Hack a baby face, so it's
Right.
no.
And-
Now, Rod, you talked about that branding. Is that the same segment where you guys cut his hair? Because I know you cut his hair.
Yeah. Man, I be honest, I do not remember. I know we ran a little angle with them. We had some things, because that's when they were turning them babyface, and I don't know if we cut the hair before and then branded them. The details are foggy, man. I don't remember, but I do remember we cut the hair, and I do remember we branded him.
Yeah.
your memory is as good as mine.
Yeah, man, that's 30 years. That his BB had a bend in it,
Yeah.
and that was my head. Bart hit me with that thing so hard one night. I was like, "Brother, what did I do to you?"
So, and another thing, because again, this rivalry to me was definitely a bright spot as far as I'm concerned. Like, I used to race home from elementary school to turn on GWF so I could see what was going on. Like, to me, it was the Patriot.
Yeah.
Because he was the face of the company, I think, at the time.
Yep.
It was Patriot. It was Walker and Simpson. And then whatever was going on with the Wild Bunch and the back when I was little, just the bad guys from California. Like, I don't even.
You were watching on ESPN then.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You know, there's no telling how many people I've seen over the years that told me that they watched this after school on ESPN, and
Absolutely.
yeah, you just don't realize what kind of outreach you have until you hear all that. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I was a huge fan of the GWF. Like, to me, because then, like, when ESPN Classic started re-airing the episodes back when ESPN Classic was a thing back in 2013, like, it would be on for like 6-7 hours, and I would watch every episode. And if I wasn't home, I DVR it or whatever, just
Hmm.
because it took me back. And it's just like I remember that. Like, I remember what happened.
Global was really an alternative.
Yeah.
You know, at that time you were getting whatever Vince was trying to do with the cartoons and stuff and everything, and WCW and all that, and we really were an alternative at the time,
Yeah.
and some guys got a great start in their career working in Global.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And James, we had ESPN, plus we did the Dallas station. I think it was Channel 11 at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
When we still had that too, which
yeah.
was a total different wrestling style.
Yeah, and probably around 200 syndicated stations.
Yeah.
But the ESPN show that you guys watched was we used to complain about it. Eddie, I remember when Eddie Gilbert was booking, he really complained about it because they edited it to a point to where they wouldn't show some certain things. You know, they
Okay.
cut away, for this or cut away for that or cut something out, and so you guys were getting a real sanitized version of what we were doing. If if you could have seen the way we actually were doing things, it would have been a lot. It was a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of, well, back then when I was a kid, it probably would have traumatized me. But now I'd probably be like, okay, like, let's see what's.
Well, and that was the reason ESPN was showing it in the afternoon, and they knew what their audience was, and
Yeah.
and they were trying to kind of tame things down a little bit, I think. But it was much different live and much different on our syndicated and Channel 11 show than what was shown on ESPN.
Right.
Yeah. I think at one point we tried to, I know as personally, tried to get away with something on ESPN and see if they could catch it.
Yeah, yeah. It was a kind of a cat and mouse game with them, but yeah, we were a lot. I guess you would call it a lot closer to the old Texas style roughhousing
Right.
than what you saw on ESPN.
Okay.
Would you guys say that GWF was one of the last? Would you consider it like a last bigger territory, or would you say it was just like more of an alternative for WCW and WWF?
Well, it's kind of hard to call it a territory because we didn't really do a lot of house shows.
Right.
Okay.
But it was an alternative, definitely. Probably the last real territory was USWA.
Yeah.
And Rod and I killed that too.
Yeah, we killed that
one. That's a whole other story, Bart.
That's another
Yeah.
book.
That'll be another episode, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be in my book if Mark James ever gets it out.
Now, one of the things, and I was talking to Rod about this before we went on air, because I do want to talk about it, because it's actually it's definitely in my top 10, top 12 of favorite matches. Okay. The Bunkhouse 2 out of 3 Falls match. It was Rod and John defending the tag titles against Bart and Wild Bill. And beforehand, like, they did the little like vignette where Bart and Bill were in the locker room and they were filling the bag with all the stuff they were going to use in the Bunkhouse match.
Yeah, I remember.
And
yeah.
Bill's got the horseshoe in his hand, and Bart goes, "Bill, don't you forget that horseshoe. You make dagnum sure that's in there." And by the way, Rod, you took the horseshoe for the final fall.
Well, naturally.
He's the only one that had hard enough head to do that. Really.
Because my good friend James was booking, so who else is going to take the ball?
Yeah. Rod, do you have any memories of that match?
Not after.
Vaguely, man. I really don't. I haven't seen it. I'd have to see that match on video to recall it. But because we did, there was a time, and James will verify this. There was a time we were doing 5 matches on Friday nights, 5 TV matches.
Oh, geez.
So all those GWF matches really ran together because you're doing them, one after the other. You come out of the ring, they'd have an intermission, and you change your gimmick and go back out for the next one.
Yeah, it was pretty chaotic at first, and when we were trying to do so many matches in one night. Eventually, we got to a point to where we were taping every week and doing usually 2 shows instead of 4 or 5. You know, and that changed everything. Made it a lot easier on the booker, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and the boys.
Yeah. It's so tough to do that, to put it all together and keep some kind of cohesiveness and tell those stories and even keep it straight in your own mind, much less fans, when you're taping 4 or 5 episodes in one night and trying to make it all work together, it's almost impossible. Step on your toes.
Right. Now another thing, again in the Wild Bunch California Connection saga, when Bart turned on Bill, broke my heart, by the way. But
there you go. I told you went back and forth.
Yeah. And it was like, all right, so you guys wanted your tag titles back, John and Rod, and Akbar basically did the talking for you guys and said, if the California Connection, if we don't win the belts back, then the Coast to Coast Connection is going to split up. And John, of course, had that bionic pout that Craig Johnson used to say all the time, where he's just like, what do you mean we're going to split up? Like, no. And then Akbar whispered something in his ear. And like Akbar was always the master of, tossing money around. I mean, he used to do it. I remember when he would do it in Mid-South. I remember when his Wild Samoans were getting ready to go against the Assassin and Ernie Ladd. And before the match, Akbar handed the Assassin money and said, oh yeah, by the way, turn on Ernie Ladd tonight. That's what happened.
I'll tell you how funny that is, though. In real life, Ak died with his first dollar in his pocket.
Yeah.
He wasn't that free with his money, I can promise you.
So that was just a gimmick. That was not him.
He may have been spending someone else's money. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. He would do that well, but when it came to his own,
no.
Yeah. So basically, when he offered the Assassin money, it was really Bill Watts' money that he.
You're most likely right. Yeah.
But so yeah, he whispered into Bill's ear. He's like, Bill. He whispered into John's ear, and nobody knew what was going on. And then they have the match, and Bart's just kind of standing on the apron. And this is after Bart got the haircut and the shave. And then when Bill goes to make the tag, Bart's got the horseshoe in his hand, and Bart just wallops Bill in the head with the horseshoe. You guys win your belts back. The Wild Bunch is done. Bart joins up with you guys. It was very it was heartbreaking, I think, to a lot of heartbreaking to me. I don't know how because I was invested in the Wild Bunch because the Wild Bunch were nuts.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that.
yeah.
And then Bart and Bill had their series of matches, and one of them, I think, did they do a last man standing match or something among those lines?
Quite possible. I don't remember exactly, but it's quite possible. Yeah.
Because I remember they had a match, and then I remember it looked like it was a no disqualification match, or we thought it was, and Akbar distracted the referee, and a certain tag team, one of the guys happens to be on the show with us. Uh,
Those guys,
comes-
those guys were really ruthless.
Yeah, they come in and they throw Bill over the top rope, and his neck gets hung up in the ropes.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I was just, and it made, well, like watching it back as an adult, and it's a no disqualification match, and Akbar's distracting the referee. Did you guys have like, did you have a lot of those like confusing moments?
People have asked me several times about how do you handle a no DQ match, and my only answer is as a referee, you still want to try to keep things fair. So you're trying to do that, even though you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's vocally, or trying to tell them not to do this or don't do that, or come on, let him go or whatever, anything to make it sound like there's some kind of desperation there. And that's really all you can do,
Right.
and it takes all your authority away from you, but
Right.
you still got to be in there. So you got to do something. And it's a tough thing to do without, trying to look stupid.
Yeah. And then of course, if you're the referee and you end up getting caught in like one of those situations, you could just take your frustrations out on Bruce Pritchard in a boxing match.
I did that for a few matches. Yeah.
Yeah. But and then like there was another thing, because like Bart, now how long did Rod, did you, Bart, and John kind of run along under Akbar? Because I know you guys turned face for a while.
Yeah, they tried to turn us face, but
That was a joke.
yeah, nobody was buying it. We weren't buying it, so it didn't. I think it lasted 2 weeks.
Okay.
But Bart was with us for a while, but if I remember right, I think Bart and Bill kind of broke off and were doing their little feud match.
Yeah.
And that kind of, and John and I can't remember the time. We were either with the Simpsons or Ebony Express maybe, or even Chaz and Tug. So I really can't remember.
I remember that you dropped the titles to Terry Garvin and Scott Putski, because they put them together for a little while, and then because Scott Putski was supposed to team with Gary Young, Gary got upset, and it was actually Bart that took Gary Young out of the equation by hitting him in the back of the head with the branding iron. But Gary was jealous of the fact that he didn't get to win the tag title, so he started teaming with Stephen Dane. And then I think you and John worked with Dane and Gary Young for a little bit until
I do remember working with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Until
it was such a night off.
Yeah. until the office realized it's like, all right, we got to get these guys back heel.
Well, what happened was, that was a quick move.
It didn't take long.
No, and at the time, I think we were short on baby faces, if I remember right, James.
Yeah, that happens sometimes, and you just have to work with what you got. We had a period of time there when Pedicino left, and there wasn't as much money.
Right.
And if actually there wasn't as much money when we was there as it turned out, but we were kind of working on a shoestring budget for a while, using a lot of guys that lived locally and bringing in a couple of guys, and that kind of thing. And you just had to be creative and try to work around what you had to work with. And sometimes that meant you had to switch somebody like those guys for a little while, or do something with them to kind of change gears for a little bit.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense. 100%. Yeah, because I remember, and Rod, I think I've talked to you about this before, because there was a period in time where you ended up getting the GWF title because you're the guy that was supposed to defend it against you just didn't show up to the building.
That happened a lot. I'd walk in and James said, "Hey, you're the new champ. So-and-so's not making it or gone." Or
yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
that's what happened that night. John
I
Layfield
think that
started.
happened with Scott Putski, and it happened with Stevie Ray, I think.
Yeah, it was a struggle really back in those days because, like I said, the money wasn't big. We had to work with a kind of a cut down crew, and they would, they were trying to bring in this guy and that guy, and you'd have travel problems, or they'd have money problems, or there'd be something that would happen, and there you are, all your best laid plans don't happen, and it was frustrating to deal with that.
Right.
Well, a lot of times it'd be a match we had somewhere in Ardmore, Oklahoma, where he dropped the belt.
Yeah, yeah, be some kind of pseudo match somewhere.
Yeah.
So getting back to Bart, I want to kind of fast forward a little bit, even though I could talk global for like the next 4 hours, but then we'd miss SmackDown. But like I want to. Do you guys? Either one of you guys? Did you ever see Bart's brief WCW run as Big Train Bart?
I watched the other night. I watched a couple of his matches, and I'm thinking of myself as Big Train Bart or whatever he was, and I'm thinking to myself, that is just so out of place. It just didn't look right.
He did not look happy.
No, that gimmick did not suit him, and Bart wore everything on his sleeve. So if he wasn't happy, he wasn't hiding it.
Yeah, and I don't think it lasted long. I think it was in November. I know that because of the WCW show, because WCW had like 50 TV shows at the time. And I'm not really complaining because I actually watched all of them. And like the one syndicated show, WCW Prime, Bart wrestled this guy named Galaxy, or it was either Galaxy or Battlestar or something. And it was like he lost the match, and you could just tell during that match he just had that look on his face like, "Dadgummit, I don't want to be here."
Yeah.
And then I think he worked another TV match with Disco Inferno, Glenn Gilberti. He worked the 60-man Battle Royal, which I'm sure that's the reason why he got brought in.
Right.
And then I think he was gone right after.
He didn't last long, and I know Rick told me he didn't like that. He didn't like that experience, that time at all. He felt out of place, and like I said, when I watched the match, it kind of tied everything together, what he told me back then and what I saw, because I've never seen him do that gimmick, and I can see why.
Yeah.
He was not happy.
Yeah. I don't even know who came up with the gimmick, because I know Kevin Sullivan was booking at the time, but I don't think Kevin Sullivan would do that to him.
No, Kevin was smarter than that.
Yeah.
That sounds like something, there's no telling. Flair or somebody probably,
Well, Bart's talked about before that Bart didn't like Flair, did he?
They had some. I don't know that he didn't like him. I think there were some. I think he felt like Flair looked down on him a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think that was the issue more than anything else, which is kind of crazy because Bart could work with anybody. I don't care if it's Ric Flair or whoever, but I think he felt like they kind of looked down their nose at him a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, and because, Flair kind of did the same thing with Mick Foley. And, and I'm not really comparing Black Bart to Mick Foley because Bart really wasn't about that hardcore style. He was more about just, he didn't need weapons to beat you up. I mean, he would use a branding iron, but he would usually just beat you up with his fists.
Right.
But like, do you think that maybe it's just like the type of like roughhouse thing that's what Flair really just wasn't a fan of?
It could have been that, or just the different personalities. I mean,
different personalities and different styles.
Yeah, Bart's just an old country boy. I mean, that was him. It's the way he was, and a lot of that glitz and glamour kind of thing was just not up his alley, and I think he just felt out of place with that.
Right.
It's crazy to think about because I mean, has it been? I feel like those two would have put on an amazing match back in the day too.
Rick and Bart.
Yeah,
Oh,
has it been done? Or,
Without a doubt.
I mean, I don't remember it ever. I don't remember ever seeing it.
I don't. I was trying to think if they ever did that in world class or something, but I don't think so. I don't remember it either. It would have been a good match if you know.
Yeah.
If no question about it. 'Cause, you know, like I said, Bart could have a good match with anybody, and you have to put him in there with somebody of Flair's caliber, and it's going to be great. It's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I am going to backtrack a little bit because I do want to talk about Starrcade '85.
Okay.
Well, the Gathering, as it was labeled. It was Black Bart and the Outlaw Ron Bass. Bart was managed by J.J. Dillon in a bull rope match. And if Outlaw Bass could beat Black Bart, he got a match with J.J.
Oh.
Now, Bass won, which, by the way, it's very hard to imagine Outlaw Ron Bass. The Outlaw Ron Bass, I remember from WWF, being a babyface anywhere.
Right.
And that's no disrespect to Ron Bass. I just always thought it was a better heel. He beats Bart, but with help, I believe, from Bart, JJ beats Ron Bass. And so it's one of those things where it's like, it's finally, because, you know, Bass they were tag team champions under JJ.
Yeah.
And
I
Bass,
tell you what, JJ, a lot of people don't give JJ the credit for being the caliber of wrestler that he was. I mean, he was an excellent wrestler.
yeah.
And we think of him as a manager, but man, he was main event guy at one time.
Right.
And when they started doing those war games, he was like a crucial part of it too. Like, and he was taking all the big bumps and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, he was credible. I love JJ personally, and you know, he's just a wonderful person, but one of the greatest minds in this business too.
Yeah, it definitely. And I remember JJ's promo after winning the match. He's like, you know what? He goes, it was tough, but I knew I can do it. I knew I could do it. He goes, I was hoping I didn't have to. I was kind of counting on Bart to take care of things. But, you know, it is what it is, and I got it done. And John Falsetta in the chat said that Bart did face Flair in Georgia and in Jim Crockett Promotions.
Okay.
Yeah, if he did, that would be where it would happen, I would imagine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, John, we appreciate you filling us in the chat room here, because it's stuff that, you know, either I just gloss over or nobody can, like, because it's kind of hard to remember everything on air. And our buddy Bob Hazelwood says, I remember Bart being with Dutch in those Desperado skits. Yep, we talked about him earlier.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah. How can it not be?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How can it not be? Like, those were that was comedy. And Dutch even said, he goes, they probably would not have drawn any money. He goes, but they were fun to do.
Well, you know, and you just never know if it had the kind of support that it probably needed to take off a little bit, you know. But
Yeah.
if it was getting some negativity from some of the top guys like that, then you know how it is. It's politics. It just works that way, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. But kind of getting back, because of course I get sidetracked, which happens a lot on the show. Getting back to the bull rope match, do either one of you guys remember that Starrcade match with Outlaw Bass and Bart?
Yeah.
James,
Yeah.
I don't remember.
You know, Bart worked with, you know, as a partner and against Ron Bass for, I don't know, quite a while, and had a pretty good run.
Yeah, I remember because I know they were tag champions, and they actually mentioned that they were tag team champions, you know, in the little side side thing, you know, when they talked about like their accomplishments or whatever before the bunkhouse match against Rod and John in the GWF.
Bart always spoke pretty highly of Bass. He was
Always.
I think that little time period there, I think, was one of his favorite time periods.
I agree.
Yeah, it was a good time period. Like 85 was that 85 Starrcade was awesome. In my opinion. And I want to ask both of you this, and James, I'll start with you, and then Rod will go right to you. What did Bart work better as, a baby face or a heel?
I liked him better as a heel.
Yeah.
I mean, he could go either way. I mean, he was good enough to do whatever. But I think he was the most effective and probably had more value as a heel, just simply because he has that kind of personality and he understood how to lead. You know, he could take a baby face even if it was green and have great matches with him. He had great matches with Kerry, and Kerry was one of those guys that he was a great athlete and he could follow anybody. He wasn't going to lead anybody, but a guy like Bart could get in the ring with him, and they just have great matches.
Yeah.
And bring out the best in other guys, and that's what Bart was good at. You know, he was a consummate professional. I one of my favorite people to get in the ring with. A lot of people thought my nose and his nose were hooked together, but he really understood how to work with a referee, or me in particular, how I could help him get heat, and how he could work around me and with me to enhance his match, and that meant all the world to me when you got a guy like that, and Bart was one of the best.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Working with Bart, for me, I learned what a true ring general was by working with Bart, because he was in control of everybody. You know, he commanded the match, the referee, your partner. If it was a tag team partner, he was controlling him, telling him. I mean, he taught me so much about being a ring general, to really understand what it takes to do that. And Bart's knowledge of wrestling, I thought he was a better heel than a baby face. I liked working with him as a baby face. But for me, when he was babyface heel, it wasn't that much of a change either. You know, there wasn't a big style difference. So
Yeah.
I sure enjoyed. You know, I learned so much from Bart. World's lost a great man, and he was a good friend to me, and I know he's a good friend to James. And I've heard JBL say that, and I was going to tell you that story. JBL was talking about how Dickie came in and put on all of Bart's gear, and Bart lost his mind looking for it. He got so mad at JBL because he could swear he stole it. And I was sitting right there. I was laughing. And John's like, Bart, I did not steal your stuff. And Bart wanted to fight him. And JBL was like, Bart, you've lost your mind. I didn't take the stuff. And no longer did those words get out of JBL's mouth did Murdoch walk in wearing Bart's gear. And Dickie's like, Bart, what's the matter? Said they stole my gear, Dickie. Dick's wearing his hat, his long jacket, everything. And it took it at least a good 10 minutes before Bart realized that Dickie was wearing it. And when he did, man, he just exploded back on Dickie and on JBL.
Dick absolutely lived to give Bart trouble.
Man.
It was one thing after another every night. Somewhere else he would find some way to rib Bart, and Bart just Bart would just take it and grin, and then he'd start calling him every name in the book, and
Yeah.
it'd get really funny sometimes.
It was a lot of fun in the dressing room because I remember we were tagging together, and Dick would get Bart in the corner and would tickle him. And man, Bart would lose it. He would lose it.
I was in the ring with him one time, and Dick backed him up in the corner, and he reached up and squeezed right on his boob. You know, and Bart started screaming and yelling and looking at me. And he squeezed my damn kitty. and I was about to break up myself, and I pushed him back in the ring into the corner again. I got in between them, pushed them apart. When I did, I twisted it really good myself. Oh, he nearly came undone. Yeah, it was one of those things every night with Bart. It was funny.
Yeah.
I tell you, you're talking about JBL though, but when John had been in for a little while and kind of was starting to get a hang of things, and when we brought Bobby Duncombe Jr. in, and Bobby was kind of like he's been playing football. He was still chasing a quarterback every night when he got in the ring. I mean, it was that wild, and we put them together as a tag team, and and they were working with Bart and John Mantell one night. That was the first time Johnny had worked with them. And Bart, but before the match and all, Bart was back in the dressing room. He said, Johnny, I'm trying to tell you, you can't do nothing with them boys. You know how he would talk. And they get in the ring, and the first time Johnny tied up with Bobby, he powdered. He did. It hit him so hard he powdered. He got outside the ring and he had his head down on the apron like this. And I was telling John, you got to get back in the ring. And he said, I ain't getting back in there. You got to get back in here. And he tried to tag Bart from the outside and said, I'm not going to let you do that. You know, you're going to have to get in the ring. Finally, I got him back in the ring. He rolled in and tagged Bart and rolled right back out. But
one more thing, and James, I know you've been in there. Be talking with Bart. We'd be there early. Bart would be dressed, and we'd be spitting in the same trash can.
Yep.
When JBL came in and he heard that cowbell, Bart would just like go, "Oh, there's that SOB now."
Yeah, I tell you what, I miss coming into the dressing room. Bart would always be sitting in the corner with that big old trash can in front of him.
Yeah,
you know, that was just spittoon, and that was every night's business. But he was a guy you could count on in the dressing room too. I mean, he kind of policed things a little bit. You know, somebody got out of hand or did something stupid, they usually have to talk to Bart about it, and he was really good about that.
I would not want to be like, I would be on my best behavior if I knew I had to deal with Bart.
Oh, he could cut an interview on you. I mean, I saw him do it a lot of times.
You feel about that tall, real quick.
Yeah. He would really get on those guys, you know, and they didn't remember. I mean, forget it. You know, they were going to remember what he did.
Yeah. You know, I'm real sad because like I never had the opportunity to meet Bart. I never really had the opportunity to interview him or anything like that. I think it would have been a hell of an interview if we ever would have got him on the pocket. I know, like once we started hitting, you know, big time. Well, not necessarily big time, but like we started really kind of developing relationships. I think he was already sick.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's definitely like, and Bob Hazelwood in the chat says, you know, of course, all my interactions with Bart were outside the ring, but I always found him to be such a kind man. And that's, he just seemed that way. And like his interviews, like his shoot interview that he did.
Yeah.
He's a very kind man. And even like before his passing, when his wife, because for some reason, somebody decided to say, you know, when he came home from the hospital,
I saw that.
And somebody was just like, and Bob says, when Bart appeared on the podcast with Terry Sims, he had us laughing so hard we were crying. And I can believe that. But when Bart came home from the hospital and Bart's wife basically said it could be any day now.
Right.
And then like people already on Facebook were saying, oh, R.I.P. Bart, Bart passed away. And then Bart's wife saw that and she got him to be on camera and he could barely talk, but he basically said, he's like, I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last time I talked to him, he was having a hard time just talking. And, he was struggling there, but he fought a good fight. And when he first found out about the cancer, he made his mind up. He was going to fight it to the end, and he did. He never really gave up. I think he just got tired of what it was doing to his body and his family and everything else. And I think he was just ready to be over with it.
Yeah.
Right. I agree, James. I talked to him and he said, Rod, I'm going to fight this with everything I got. I said, I know you are, Bart. We're praying for you and, praying that the Lord will take you easy. And when he came home, when I saw that picture, I told my wife, I told Tammy, I said, he's coming home to die.
Yeah.
It was time, but he fought. He's a mule. He fought hard head. He fought with everything he had.
Yeah, and when he made that statement to let everybody else know, he was like, and he could barely talk, but he made this. He's like, that just goes to show how important people were to him, and it's like, I'm still here. He goes, the fight's almost over. Like I'm drained, but I'm not going anywhere yet. And then when he told his wife, she posted on Facebook and she's like, Bart, what do you want me to do when you're gone? He's like, have a party.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what we're planning on doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a deal. We have what we call a shootout. Red Bastille started it many years ago. And it's been going on for, oh my goodness. I think the first one was back in the early 90s or something like that.
Yeah, it's over 30 years, 35.
Yeah, it was a long time. Red was a very good friend of myself, and he was Rod's trainer.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this thing for a long time, and we're going to incorporate that into a memorial for Bart this year on April 26th in Dallas. So we're gonna honor him, get together, and have that party he wanted us to have, and have a bunch of his buddies there, and just kind of remember and have a good time.
And, awesome. And he told Linda he didn't want anybody boo and hoo over him. But you know what, Bart? I know you're listening from heaven. I shed a few tears for you, brother. I miss you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and he won't be forgotten for sure. It's I'm starting on April the 3rd. John Layfield and myself and Rod will be involved, and Lynn Denton, the grappler, and Jazz, Rodney Mack. We're going to start doing some personal appearances and doing some it's kind of a unique situation where we'll be it's called Beers with the Boys, and John will be the headliner, and it'll be a kind of a informal situation where the fans will come in and we'll just sit around and talk to them, answer questions, tell some stories, and to be a lot more personal than some of these fan fest type things where they just sign autographs and you go on down the line. So they'll be able to spend 2 or 3 hours with us and that kind of setting, and we're going to be doing that in several different places, and starting, like I said, in Waco on April 3rd, and Bart will be a topic in those conversations for sure. A lot of times.
Yeah. Oh, how can he not be?
Yeah, absolutely. He had so much to do with all of our careers. I mean, we're all kind of interlaced, kind of that family of guys that
worked out in Sportatorium, Texas.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, personally speaking for myself, I mean, you guys were a big part of, my fandom, especially with the global, which is why usually when I arrange to try to have guests on the show, it's usually any of the global guys. Because you were the guys I want to, and Rod, you've been on this podcast, man, first time on video, so you finally got to see what we look like, and we apologize.
Your ratings may go down.
Used to be a lot prettier than that.
Yeah. But I know it worked earlier, that's why I used it. But yeah, like you guys were just like, because you guys were so like. And I know WWF or WWE has always been king, but you guys were such a great alternative because it's just like, and it was something for me to watch when I came home from school when I didn't feel like watching cartoons.
Yeah.
I got to watch you guys. I got to watch, Bart break Rod's crutch in half with a branding iron, or I got to watch John Tatum get hit with Bill Irwin's Mr. Lash.
And it means a lot when we hear those things too. We don't realize, I guess, that you're part of somebody else's life until you hear it later on like that. I didn't realize what an outreach it had until I was working in Japan and working with regular tours with WWF guys, and Barry Darsow had been in England, and I met him in Tokyo at Narita. And he said, I just got through watching you on television. I said, where? And he said, I was in London, and we were sitting around watching TV, and the Global was on, and I was, wow, it got out there, and you don't realize it until you hear stories like that,
right.
and we appreciate the fact that we entertain some guys in their growing up years,
Yeah, well, it's amazing. It really is, like you said, James. How many people have came up and said, "Hey, you were there when I had nobody else." GWF,
Yeah.
And it's very humbling.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another like personal story. I remember I had you guys, or I had GWF on. My dad comes in and says, "What are you watching?" I said, "It's wrestling. Like, you let me watch wrestling all the time." And he turned it off. He's like, "It's not WWF or WCW." Turns the TV off. He walks out of the room. He goes downstairs to his room. I turn the TV back on because the show still had about 15 minutes left. So I'm finishing the show. Yeah. Now I got grounded because he came back up.
That's fair.
I got grounded for like a day or two, but still, it was just like, I'm finishing watching the show. If you don't mind.
It's fans like you that made us, brother. Take that butt kicking and still watch GW.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, like I still found a way. And what was also funny too is because our grandfather was such a fan that, like, when I got told I couldn't watch it anymore, just go to Grandpa's house. He's got it on.
Awesome. That whole global experience really kind of, I'm pretty proud of it, actually. I think we did a lot of good things, and like I said, we gave a lot of guys a start in this business that have gone on and done really well.
Absolutely.
And it changed my whole outlook about my career too. I had the deal in Japan, and I worked in other places and had opportunities to go to some of the bigger promotion, like WWF, whatever, and WCW and everything. And I never really wanted to do that because I've always had it in my mind that I wanted to be a part of recreating that alternative again.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing all these years, and what I'm still trying to do, it's kind of my thing, my cross to bear, I guess, but that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing with Texas style wrestling right now. And it's just a quest almost. Yeah. And it all came from that global experience, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And any younger fan, I would definitely, especially anybody that listens to this show, I would definitely encourage them to go back and watch old GWF, of course, but also, all of Black Bart's work at World Class and stuff.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
I mean, it's just like, it's almost like a master class, and like watching him, and it was just so good, and psychology wise in the ring and stuff. It's just I feel like there's a lot not only that new wrestlers could learn from him, but just fans that like, oh, why is it the way it is now, and just go back and watch that stuff.
I can tell you this without any doubt. If you go back and watch a series of Bart matches, you won't see a bad match.
No.
No,
I don't care who he's with.
Not at all. Even some of like his WWF matches where he's just putting guys over. He still made sure they look good.
Yeah.
Like I saw a match. It was only like a match was only like a minute and a half, but he wrestled Nikolai Volkov.
Yeah.
And they were trying to get Nikolai over as a babyface. So everybody tried to get over natural heels as baby faces, back in the day. And Bart bumped his, because Nikolai really wasn't like a technical wrestler. He could pop you. And imagine if him and Bart were allowed to go like 10 or 12 minutes, they'd have to come back and they'd have to ice each other. They'd have to ice themselves down.
Oh yeah.
Because they both hit very hard, but Bart basically gave Nikolai, or basically just let Nikolai just get all this stuff in, got the quick win, but still Bart really gave him a lot.
Yeah,
that's the thing about the style of wrestling that we had in Dallas, when it goes back to but even before world class, but world class and global and everything that's followed since is that it's stuff you can't see through. There's all kinds of different styles, but you don't see through it. And
Right.
and that's what Bart came out of, and that's how he learned, and that's how his matches were. You couldn't see through any of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So this has been. Now we are gonna cut it in a couple minutes here, so everybody can get ready for Friday night Smack. I don't want to take any of SmackDown's viewership away.
Yeah. Please.
But I do want to thank James and Rod. Thank you both for coming on.
Thank you both.
And I want to give you both, and James, will start with you. One more opportunity. What in your opinion is something that everybody should remember the most about Black Bart?
That he was real. He was the real deal. I mean, what you saw in the ring was Bart. And I mean, whether it was a babyface or heel, it doesn't matter. His personality was that. He was dedicated. He was a great friend, but he was dedicated to this business, and he was dedicated to the people he loved. And the wrestling business is better off for having a Bart in it. That's all I can tell you.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Rod, we'll go to you. Same question.
I think Bart's professionalism, I think, stands out, like James is touching on. I want to touch on that Bart loved the Lord, and he tried to reach everybody he could, even when he was fighting with cancer, to spread the gospel. And I love Bart, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. The world has lost a good human person, and heaven's gained something that the Lord created, and we all appreciate.
Yeah. And think of it like this: him and Bass can finally finish their feud up in heaven.
That's right.
Yeah. And Akbar is probably going to be in Bart's corner.
Most likely.
But thank you guys so much for being on. This
Thank
has
you,
been
Doug.
a pleasure.
It's such a pleasure, man.
Yeah.
Every time.
And we'll definitely reach back out to, because there's more global, obviously, that I could talk myself personally. And he's just like, oh boy.
I love that.
Yeah. The more global I could talk personally with both of you, and the other global alumni. So we look forward to having you guys back on the show soon.
Anytime.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anything anybody
Bye,
like to
guys.
plug? Are we good or?
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm working with Texas Style Wrestling down here. Texas TV will be dropping real soon. That's going to be a new network, streaming network. We'll be on that. We're pretty excited about that, and also remember that Beers with the Boys with JBL and some of our friends. We're going to be traveling around different places doing that over the next few months, and I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a good year.
Awesome.
All right. And Rod, do you want to take this opportunity to yell at the people to try to get your water turned back on?
Well, my voice is strained already. Thank God we got a wonderful councilwoman. That's Kim Chauvin has been on the job, so she's done all my screaming.
Yeah.
But the water will come back.
Yeah. Well, good. And
Because
gentlemen,
I definitely need a shower.
yeah. I know I need to get a drink of water. My voice is about to go. But again, gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next week on the podcast, we're going to be doing Royal Rumble 96, correct?
Yes, sir.
So just had to get that out there so everybody knows what we're doing next week. Then, of course, tomorrow, Eric and I will be around for the cartoon podcast.
I'm still here.
Yeah. Eric, I know you didn't fall asleep. But he's just he's been sitting there taking notes.
Yeah.
No, I enjoyed listening.
Yeah.
Instead of
So
good
again,
history lesson.
We appreciate you, brother.
all right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys very much.
Ryan.
And we'll
Thanks, Dave.
we'll see everybody next week.
Okay.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Take
Rest
care.
through the years.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
I think